Throwback Thursdays, a sketchbook, began with a piece I wrote for an NPR program called Dime Stories. Dime Stories was a monthly event that took place at locations across the country where at live readings, people would read stories that had to be 3 minutes or less. They were recorded, then uploaded. People went through them and decided which ones would be the ones that they would broadcast that week. So I did this story at a reading for Dime Stories. It was the first time I'd done one that was really brief. You know, I had taken a story that I'd written before and I cut it down for length to fit that. And the story's great anyway, and it really kind of lent itself to this kind of a thing. Got a good reaction from people. Sometime later, with the phenomenon of, was it the hashtag Throwback Thursday, I began posting on Facebook on Thursdays stories that I wrote that are biographical, autobiographical, told in the present tense. The reason I did that was initially when I tried to post that story, that Dime Stories story, it was longer than 2,000 characters. And with Facebook looks at 2,000 characters as the limit for a post. If your piece is longer than 2,000 characters, Facebook converts it into a note. And very simply what happens is with a note, it opens that in a separate window, browser window. And what I found immediately was people weren't going there. So I thought, all right, well, if they want to stay in their timeline in Facebook, I need to keep it under 2,000 characters. 2,000 characters, not words. That's pretty short. It's a page. It's basically like a page. So I wrote a piece about, and I shamelessly picked the most famous name I knew. I had an encounter with Steven Spielberg, so I wrote this piece about encountering Steven Spielberg and him telling me the name of his next film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and then not telling me anything about what it's about, telling me that was a secret, and how I ended up accidentally finding out what that meant. So 2,000 characters, once a week, I'd publish these stories, and that was kind of how it started. What came out of it was the idea that I had some themes that were sort of manifesting themselves. A lot of it has to do with my family, with my parents. A lot of it had to do with cars and my experience in cars. I was taught to drive very early for reasons which I won't go into now, but it turned out there was a reason. And part of what the Throwback Thursdays pieces are really about is creating a multi-perspective picture of my life growing up. What I came to realize was there's a guy, Junot Diaz, he's a writer, and he does these books that are compilations of stories, but the stories all add up to a whole. So I thought, I really like the way he does that. Each chapter is a story in itself. But when you look at them all taken together, there's a bigger story. Well, okay, that's what I'm doing. So I started looking at what the patterns were and realizing there were patterns. I was also getting encouraged from people who were reading them. People who read them really liked them and said, you should put these in a book. So I thought, okay, well, I've already got them out there. I just need to keep going until I have enough material. I'm not sure what enough material is at this point because I continue to come up with ideas. But there have been certain things that have kind of come out of that are significant. And so the byproduct of this is a book that I am developing using those pieces of Throwback Thursdays to create these short stories that would then be chapters in the book that all contribute to creating this overall story. So they're sketches. That's really what they are. That's why I called it a sketchbook, because these pieces that are 2,000 characters, they're almost just to remind me of the memory of the event, so that I can go back to it and then redraw it, rewrite it, and try and bring more into it. One of the pieces was actually published in a literary journal, Lummox #6. That's a piece called On the Run in the Getaway Car, which is about my brother and sister and I, and an experience that we had in a car, which was really unusual. And that's kind of how these stories come to be. For whatever reason, something sort of surfaces, and I think, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to use that one because that tells part of this story that I don't even know what I'm telling yet. But I know it when I see it. What inspired me to create this book specifically was an experience that I had at my 10-year high school reunion. Prior to my reunion, my mother had been murdered. And while it had been out of the news for a while, right before the reunion, something had happened. The man who killed her had been arrested for killing someone else in the same manner. And I was getting ready to go to my high school reunion, and that was what was in the newspapers. And I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go there. I'm dreading this. People are just going to talk about this all night. Oh my God. No one said a thing to me. And I was so relieved. And then this guy, Duncan Kennedy, came up to me and he said, when I heard what happened to your mom, and I just kind of tensed, not sure what's going to happen, but knowing something is. And he said, all I could think of was her in her uniform when she was our den mother in Cub Scouts. And I stopped and said, what? She was our den mother? And all of a sudden, this picture of her in my friend's garage in her blue and gold uniform just popped into my head. And I thought, oh my God, I forgot that she was our den mother in Cub Scouts. The loss of her was profound. What happened was horrible, horrible. I can't even begin to explain how it was horrible. But what happens is your mind's trying to protect you from it, and so what I think was happening was it was beginning to suppress the negative experiences. But it's not discrete. It actually ends up suppressing other experiences as well, some that I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose the memory of my mom as a Cub Scout den mother. So I thought, I need to start writing these down. And so I did. And in some cases, that early on, those were just a different set of sketches. But in some cases, I would just write a sentence in a file for future reference. I want to develop something based on this idea, develop something based on this, develop something based on this. And so I kind of started doing this a couple of decades ago, before Persistence of Vision even started, because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. And the more I wrote, the more I remembered, and just kept going and going and going. One of the things I think is important about writing and telling stories is for people to realize that they're not alone, that things that happen to one person may also happen to someone else, and that can contribute to a culture of compassion. It makes a huge difference when you know you're not alone in an experience, and I'm going to say there have been times when I made I assumed that I knew what someone was feeling because I had lost my mom. And I came to realize how I would feel if someone had told me, oh, I know how you feel. You don't. But you can still appreciate the loss and share with them the grief that they're experiencing. So yeah, I mean, if to get what I'd like the reader to get out of it is that if they've had a similar experience, and I mean, this book is just basically all about experiences. What was your relationship like with your mom? I had a weird relationship with my mom. My mom simultaneously thought I was a genius and told me when I was an adult that she had been scared of me when I was a kid. And I was like, what? You were scared of me? And she said, yeah, because you talked about so many things that I didn't understand, even at a very young age. I didn't feel as your mother that I was part of your world. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder if anybody else has had that experience. It's kind of the thing about parenting is, and I'm not a parent, so I can't speak about this from personal experience, but I know a lot of kids, I know a lot of people who've had kids, and part of what you're trying to do is make them smarter than you. You want to give them that leg up, and it's funny because what happened was she did, and it was like she was almost scared of what she had done deliberately. I wanted to be smart, and I was. But to her, that was scary. It was kind of weird having your mom tell you that, too, I have to say. Really just, trying to find what connects us as people, what are our similar experiences, shared experiences, emotion, love and grief. So there's a lot of love and grief in Throwback Thursdays. I see them as two sides. I see love and grief as two sides of the same coin.